It starts with Israel attacking Iran. Now, this hasn't happened yet. There have been a number of indications that there are forces which are trying to push this into happening. You've only got to follow the news for the last 2 years to realize that the public is being prepared for a justification for this kind of thing. Iran is being set up as being the bad guys that deserve something to happen to them.
All right, today was meant to be my day off. I was looking forward to just chilling out, maybe play a little bit of RuneScape, but Israel have decided to bomb Iran. A preemptive strike, apparently, because just in case you were going to bomb us, we're going to bomb you. Makes total sense, right? The reason why this is significant, though, is because we've been told about this. This is part of a sequence of events for what we are told is in preparation for the New World Order. Bill Ryan told us in 2010 of a whistleblower who came to him where he was basically told a series of events that were planned to happen. Now, Bill himself says in this interview that he doesn't know if it's going to happen. Doesn't seem like things are happening in the order they were told, but he felt like it was important to say it. And the reason why his video got so famous is because in 2010, he spoke about how in this boardroom meeting, they were talking about a bioweapon that was going to be unleashed on China, and they were all laughing about how China was going to catch a cold. And this was just one event in a whole grand chain of things that were planned to happen. And one of those other major things was Israel striking Iran. We're going to be looking at the clips from Bill Ryan, who told us about Israel provoking Iran, about China catching a cold all the way back in 2010.
The first thing that he heard was they were talking about the fact that Israel didn't look as if it was getting prepared to attack Iran anytime soon. This was a problem. Even back in June 2005, they were apparently concerned that what it was that was planned on some kind of a timeline wasn't rolling out according to schedule, and this was an issue for them. So that attracted his attention very quickly because he'd never been in a meeting when this kind of thing was discussed. Then they were talking about China and how powerful China was getting both militarily and financially very quickly, and that the Japanese weren't doing what they were supposed to do, which was to interfere in some way with the Chinese financial system. They weren't doing that, and this was another problem because China was getting too strong too quickly. Other things that were discussed were, for example, the coming financial crash, the centralization of resources, everything that we saw starting to happen in October 2008. They were planning that and referring to it in their meeting in June 2005. It's very important information. We need to know this stuff. Even though it doesn't look like it's going to be on track, I don't think this will happen. I think that there are a bunch of crazy people there who are extremely determined to do something, and they were in a hurry, and this is important to understand. They were in a rush to try and roll out this sequence of events. Now, what he described is what the sequence of events was. It starts with Israel attacking Iran. Now, this hasn't happened yet. There have been a number of indications that there are forces which are trying to push this into happening. You've only got to follow the news for the last 2 years to realize that the public is being prepared for a justification for this kind of thing. Iran is being set up as being the bad guys that deserve something to happen to them, and so on and so forth. Now, that's going to be the start of what is like the opening gambit in a big chess game. And the plan is to provoke Iran or China to retaliate. And our guy, our source, who is a military man, is privately as convinced as he can be, although this has never been made public and this is not publicly known, that Iran does have nuclear weapons. He believes that they have been provided by China behind the scenes. And all of this is intended because it's all right with these controlling forces that Iran has nuclear weapons, because they want them to be used. The plan is for either Iran or for China to retaliate after Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon. At that point, there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, followed by a ceasefire. He heard this being planned in this meeting. This is being choreographed. It's like the script for a movie. This is exactly what's intended to happen. During this time, the other thing that's being set up for this, and many people watching this will be aware that this is being set up in the background. We've had a lot of information about this from a number of good researchers from many countries who are reporting this on the internet, that things are being set up in many of the Western countries for there to be heavy controls over populations, martial law, increased powers on security forces who are not just the army or the police, but in Britain, for example, our source said that he absolutely knew personally for a fact, that a very large number of private security people, their powers were being increased to give them the ability to arrest people, the ability to detain, the ability to handle riots in streets. And here we're talking about just regular people working in private security, people who give the parking tickets on the streets. Their powers are being increased in the same way. And last year, we heard President Obama talking about how he wanted to have a sort of National Guard at home in America ready to handle this kind of thing. There are a lot of indicators that this is being set up. And in this rollout of this crazy scenario, where it is intended that there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, the idea is that as the world looks upon this with horror, then they will demand from their governments that there are heavy controls over travel, over communication, over people who meet, over people who protest in the streets. They want to make sure that they don't have crazy bombers on airplanes, crazy bombers in the shopping malls. They want to make sure, and because people will be driven into fear by this, they'll request and demand and insist on heavy controls from their governments, which will be justified. And this is where you're going to kind of get the martial law situation in all the Western countries.
I think that part there is so important to understand and realize that all of this crazy shit only has power if we give it what it wants, if we give into it. I know it's a lot easier said than done in these crazy times, but you cannot fear this stuff because the fear is what gives it its power. If everyone collectively just turned off the mainstream news and just went about their day, not giving a shit about the crap that was pushed down their throat, I think the world would be radically different. What would they use to manipulate your emotions, to make you start fighting each other, to program you that you're left wing or right wing or whatever the other bullshit they come up with? They wouldn't have a tool. That is the tool to control you via your emotions.
It's intended as a justification. All of this is just the start of something, because this story gets much bigger. During the time of this ceasefire, everyone's shocked, everyone's frightened, everyone's really terrified about where this is going to go. There are all kinds of heavy controls over populations everywhere. And then the next thing that happens in this chess game that's being played is that biological weapons are released on China. You heard this being discussed in this meeting. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. It's racially targeted against the Chinese people. It's designed to spread like wildfire and to knock out a large number of the Chinese people. And these people in this meeting were laughing about this. They said, China will catch a cold. Those were their words. China will catch a cold. And they were laughing about the fact that these biological weapons will wreak havoc among the Chinese population. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. Our source was not clear whether this was a Chinese retaliation or whether the thing would just spread out of control in the way that it would be very understandable if it did, whether it's racially targeted or not. These things actually mutate. So now you've got a situation where there's been a limited nuclear war in the Middle East. There's a pandemic that really is sweeping across the world and really is killing people very visibly. And you've got this totalitarian military lockdown in all the governments in the Western world because everyone's going to be in panic about all of this. And then, he said, then the real war starts. Something that would be justifiably called the Third World War with a much more major nuclear exchange. At this point, I asked him, is this just about population reduction? What is this about? Why are they doing this? Why this insane Dr. Strangelove plan for just unleashing all of this stuff on the world? Why do it? Now, he said, absolutely, it's about population reduction. So I said, well, in this meeting, did they mention any figures? And he said, yes, they did, 50%. Half the world's population. This is planned as per the Georgia Guidestones. For those of you who don't know what the Georgia Guidestones are, it's a stone monument in Georgia in America that was erected anonymously a number of years ago. It's in 8 languages, and it's like an Illuminati manifesto for a new world, as it were. And just hold that thought about this being a manifesto for a new world. This is an important concept here in what I'm presenting. One of the key parts of this manifesto for this new world is that there should be a population of 500 million people. Now, 500 million people is an enormous reduction from the nearly 7 billion that we've got at the moment. That's pretty much 95% of people who would no longer be on this planet. And 50% is a step towards that. And there's a reason why they're doing all of this.
What's interesting there is he obviously mentions the Georgia Guidestones, which we've talked about on this channel before, these massive pillars that essentially have 10 rules for the new world, one of which includes a population under 500 million. What's interesting is they were erected anonymously around the 80s, I believe, and he kind of talked about what we now know as COVID. He talked about a pandemic that was going to come starting with a bioweapon unleashed on China. Well, interestingly, during COVID in 2022, the Georgia Guidestones were destroyed. Apparently, someone vandalized them to a point where they were kind of crumbling and unsafe, and they basically just got taken down and removed, and they no longer exist. Before I forget as well, there is actually another case of someone talking about Israel planning to attack Iran, and this was a couple of years ago by Chris Bledsoe.
She's, I've seen her more than one time, and yes, I didn't hear from her except at Easter of 2013. She came back.
Okay, yeah, Regulus. It is a constant star. It's the star of Leo, the lion heart.
Yep, and when she told me when that star aligns on the horizon before daylight, in the gaze of the Sphinx, there would be a shift in the knowledge of humanity, a new knowledge, and that's what she told me. But there would be trouble along the way first, and they gave me the images of war. I even wrote that I saw Israel bomb Iran and Syria, and we're looking at it right now. I put that in writing for years. I'm not talking today. I did it. I've said this for a long time.
So there you go. Bill Ryan isn't the only one that's been saying this. And, say what you want about Chris Bledsoe. Some people think he's a modern Paul Benowitz, just being psyoped. And, if you think that, you need to ask yourself, okay, why? Why is this man being psyoped? Why would the CIA, the NSA, and all these three-letter agencies bother spending their time and resources on just some random guy who's hallucinating? Now, they may have stepped in to steer the narrative because he might be saying things that they don't want the public to know. He might be experiencing things that they want to know about, but they want to control the narrative. Just because these agencies are involved with him doesn't mean his experiences aren't real. In fact, in my opinion, the fact that they are interested in him legitimizes it, whether they're trying to control him and psyop him or genuinely want to research what he's seeing. And just before we look at the next Bill Ryan clip, I think it's important to say, when we looked at the Matthew Brown video yesterday, obviously things are getting quite heavily religious, dabbling in the occult. And you guys know I'm not religious at all. I never have been. But a lot of people in the comments start saying things like, oh, as soon as it gets religious, I step away. Oh, of course, it's all turning religious again. And look, that's fine if that's not your belief system. I get it. But I think it's still important to recognize that the people who are in control of all of this, the people who run the world, they are looking at it like that, okay? That's what they believe. Now, I'm not saying that means you should believe it. I'm saying that the people who control what happens in the world are acting based on those beliefs. So whether you believe it or not, it's actually still important because that's kind of what's happening, or at least how people are acting, assuming that these things are going to happen.
So the sequence is as follows. The planned sequence is as follows. Israel attacks Iran, then there's a ceasefire, then during which time there is heavy governmental military controls over populations in all Western countries. Then China is attacked by a biological weapon. It's a flu-like disease that spreads like wildfire. This goes all over the world, and then they have a major Third World War. And then, by this time, 50% of the population will be destroyed. And not only because of the war or the plague, but because, as many of you watching this will understand, the infrastructure goes down in situations like this. There's no food in the supermarkets, there's no gas in the pumps, the telecommunication goes down, there may not even be water coming out of the taps. People are kind of thrown back into a Victorian era without the facilities to handle this, because most people don't have their vegetable gardens, they don't have their horse and cart, they're not able to survive in the way that we used to be able to. We're very, very vulnerable in our technological advancement. We're extremely vulnerable, and of course the controllers know this. At this stage, our source was speculating about why are they in a hurry? Why do they want to do this? And there's a sort of heavy irony here, which is like, I was saying, well, if you're going to plan the Third World War, then why not take your time over it and get it right and do a really good job? You can, this could be in 20 years' time or 30 years' time, it doesn't really matter. Why is there in such a rush? And our source said that he felt, from inside information he's continued to receive, that this is still timed for something around 18 months from now. And that puts it around about the middle of 2011. He doesn't know this for sure because these events aren't calendar driven. They're actually event sequence driven. In other words, this has got to happen before that happens, and then after that the next thing can happen, then after that the next thing can happen. So a whole lot of things have got to be in place before all the dominoes fall over, so to speak. And they seem to be behind schedule in some of this. There are some planned events that definitely haven't happened. And all this time, at that time it didn't make any sense, and even now it didn't make any sense. It's like, well, all right, but why do this? Why do this? Why do this? Now, this was his answer. And our source is a pretty smart guy. He's been in the military. It's a totally different story that he didn't debrief in our audio transcript, which you have the opportunity to read, but he's had his own ET experiences in the military. He's got his own sources of information about some of the background for this. He says that he's as sure as he can be that the people who are calling the shots in the world, you can call them the Illuminati, the controllers, the cabal, whatever name you have for them, they believe that there is going to be what he called a geophysical event, a major geophysical event. He says that the best information that he's got is that the insiders believe that this is going to happen, or they are concerned that this is going to happen. And many of you watching this will know that this isn't a completely crazy idea. There have been trillions of dollars that have been spent on deep underground bases for some reason, which we don't know why it is. You'll know about the seed bank in Svalbard. This is in the public domain, where all the seeds of all the plants and all the crops in the world have been buried deep inside a granite vault in northern Norway. There are many precautions being taken as if something might happen that could really threaten some of these valuable resources, including the seed banks of the world. And this might be the justification for this insanity that we've just heard about in this plan. If there's going to be a major geophysical event, something like a pulse shift, maybe it's Planet X, maybe it's some kind of energetic phenomenon that the solar system is going to be moving into, that's going to somehow destabilize the Earth or the Earth's crust in some way, we don't know. But if there were to be a major emergency like that, something that would actually make a war look very inconsequential, the thing that will help the human race to survive it, or will help parts of the human race to survive it, is if there is already emergency preparedness in place before it happens. In other words, if you knew that there was an emergency coming, if you knew, for instance, that there's a hurricane coming in to hit your city, then you put all the emergency preparedness in place beforehand. You have the troops ready, you have the infrastructure ready, you have the military ready, you have everything that you need ready to handle this situation so you can respond and react and recover in the best possible way. Our source suggests that the reason for this whole Third World War scenario is that then the Western governments, with the Chinese out of the way, will be in a state of such totalitarian control of their own population that they will be best equipped to recover and rebuild the new world after a cataclysm.
Now, you just heard Bill say there about the seed vault in Svalbard. Just forget you heard that, okay? Just forget you heard that, because you know that in 2027, the Polarity seed vault will be open. I'll be selling all of your fruit and vegetable seeds at 10x the price. Guys, I'm just kidding, okay? I'm just kidding. A lot of people ask me, they say, how do you manage to stay sane? Like, how do you stay level-headed when you're looking at all this stuff? It's by having a sick sense of humor, okay? It's by having a dry, terrible, dark sense of humor. But seriously though, do I think there is going to be a geophysical event? No. No, I don't. I do not think that there is going to be a tidal wave that just wipes us all out. I do not think that that is going to happen. What I think is perhaps coming is the end of the world as we know it. I think there will be big changes in society. I think there will be a big shift. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it to you, but I just think we can all agree that the way the world is right now is not only not functional, but not sustainable. And I think that is probably going to hit the end of its rope, and somehow something may happen, some kind of maybe intervention where society will be forced to shift. And by the way, I don't think this will be an overnight thing either. You could even argue that we're in the beginning of it right now. Okay. Change is always turbulent. Any kind of shift in society, or even in like your daily routine, right? When you start a new job, when your routine changes, it takes a little bit of adjustment. Okay. It's a little bit awkward at first until you get in the rhythm. Change is turbulent. And I think that's what we're going through right now. And just one little side note before I let you go, there is this account on Twitter that basically records the local pizza places around the Pentagon, and it tracks how busy they are, because it believes that when all the pizza places get super busy around the Pentagon, within the next day or two, shit goes down around the world. And just yesterday, you can see there at the bottom, June 12th, 7:02 p.m., they said as of 6:59, nearly all pizza establishments nearby the Pentagon have experienced a huge surge in activity. And that is by the Pentagon Pizza Report. So if you want to keep up to date with what's going on in the world, you just need to track what's going on at the pizza places around the Pentagon, apparently. Guys, thank you for watching my video today. I do try my best to keep you up to date with all of the strange, weird stuff that's going on around the world, because as you guys know, it just keeps getting weirder and weirder, and that's why we're talking about it. Look after yourselves, guys. Stay safe. Don't give in to the fear. Get outside, touch some grass, and I'll see you next time.